Hello, and welcome to Denton's Tales of the Viking Age. And in this video, I'm going to take a look at horses in Norse mythology, or at least two horses in particular. One of them coming from the bright and glowing splendour of the home of the gods themselves, and the other dwelling below in a somewhat gloomier realm. They do share something in common, though, apart from just being horses, of course, in that both have the wrong number of legs. One has too many, 8 legs in fact, while the other has too few, only 3. When one thinks of horses in Norse mythology, I suppose the first thing that would spring readily to mind might be the horses of the Valkyria, the Valkyries, galloping across the sky as they carry dead warriors to feast with the gods in Asgard, or Asgard, as it is in English. But the two I'm thinking about have nothing to do with the thrilling and romantic corpse-collecting warrior women flying skyward with dead men draped across their horses. One of them is Sleipnir, the 8-legged horse ridden by Odin, the Allfather, principal member of the Aesir gods and ruler of Asgard. And the other is Helhest, the 3-legged horse that belonged to Hel, goddess of the dead and ruler of Helheim. There are other horses in Norse mythology, but some of them are simply names mentioned in the sagas or the Eddas without anything else really known about them, nor even who rode them, as well as some that belong to important gods, goddesses, and heroes, such as Grani, the mount of that greatest of heroes, Sigurd. Some of these horses possess some quite interesting names, such as Fencebreaker, Golden Mane, Lightfoot, Gold Tuft, Bloody Hoof, Very Quick, and Early Awake, among others. But to get on with our two principal horses, Sleipnir and Helhest. In the Hervara saga of Heidreks, or the saga of Hervor and Heidrek, Odin, disguised as he often was when he travelled around, and of course nobody recognising him as usual, despite his one eye and the big floppy hat, he asks King Heidrek a riddle, and it goes like this. Who are the twain that on 10 feet run? 3 their eyes are, but only 1 tail. This riddle ponder, O Prince Heidrek. Ah, thus it is, said the king, when Odin rides upon Sleipnir. He got it. Yeah, I suppose the riddle wasn't really all that hard, as riddles go. Or perhaps the eye patch, the big hat, gave the king a bit of a clue. So, we have Sleipnir, the grey-coloured mount of Odin, described by the All-Father himself in the poem Grimnismal from the Poetic Edda as the best horse, when he lists all the best things that exist in the world. He is also the fastest of all horses, which I suppose he should be, seeing as he has twice the number of legs. He is stronger than any other horse, and he can run on land, in the air, even on water. And because of that, he is often used by Odin on his travels through the 9 worlds, even taking him down to Helheim to consult with the dead. Now, Sleipnir was not just unusual in having an extra set of legs, which was unusual enough in itself, nor indeed his ability to fly or walk on water, but also in the manner of his birth, which was, well, curious, to say the least. Some might even say bizarre. In the early days of the gods, a builder, very kindly, offered to raise a great fortified wall for them. A fortification that would defend Asgard against the attacks of the giants, since though Thor could easily defeat any giant with his great hammer Mjolnir, so powerful and heavy that none but he could lift it, and able to shrink down to the size of an amulet, like this one, so that it could be easily carried, well, he was frequently absent from Asgard, leaving it unprotected. Now, the builder would complete the task in 3 seasons, but there was a catch. There's always a catch, isn't there, even when something seems so good. He wanted the goddess Freya, among other things, in return for his work. Now, that didn't please the gods, particularly Freya. But after some deliberation, they agreed, with a great deal of prompting by Loki. Now, that should have given them cause to consider the arrangement more carefully, but they didn't. Anything that was supported by Loki should have been viewed with suspicion. And were I Freya, I don't think I'd have been overly pleased that my fellow gods were willing even to consider using me as a payment for a wall. They did, however, set strict conditions. The builder must complete the work within a given time and have help from no man. He was on his own, no man to help him. Now the builder agreed, but he asked if he could use his horse, a stallion named Svadilfari, to assist him. Well, that seemed a reasonable request. It was a horse, after all, not a man, which met the agreed conditions, and the gods consented. However, the horse seemed to possess a super strength, greater than any horse really should, and with its help, the builder progressed at an amazing speed. The wall was flying up, and it finally dawned on the gods that there was trickery involved. And, of course, there could be only one person responsible, Loki. Who else, after all? They really should have seen that one coming. Not that the gods were exactly honest themselves. No, they were already looking for a way out of having to keep their end of the bargain anyway, especially the part about handing over Freya. So it was made clear to Loki that unless he did something to make the builder fail to complete the task, something very unpleasant was going to happen to him, like, perhaps a very painful death, something that probably Freya would have been only too happy to give him. The next time the builder set off with his horse to collect stone, a stunningly beautiful mare suddenly appeared out of the forest. A mare in heat, obviously, trotting seductively around the stallion, who went hoof over tail with irresistible desire, breaking his harness and racing after the mare. The mare, of course, actually being the shape-shifting Loki, doing what he did best, playing tricks, and in this case, doing it rather well. Mare and stallion dashed off into the forest, pursued by the builder, and they cavorted through the trees for the rest of the day and all night. Building work, of course, came to a stop. No horse, no stone, no wall. But the gods had now realized that they'd been tricked even further than they thought. The builder wasn't quite what he had seemed to be. He was actually a giant, and no friend of theirs. One of those that he was building the wall, supposedly to protect them from. So he was somewhat messily disposed of by Thor, who bashed his head in with Mjolnir. Then it turned out that the mare, Loki, and the stallion, Svadilfari, had been doing a little more than just chasing each other through the forest. Clearly they'd paused for a little, making the most of that interlude, and Loki, still in his horse guise, gave birth to a grey-coloured foal with 8 legs, which he gave to Odin. How nice of him. You know, it's fair to say, I think, that Loki had somewhat of a genetic problem when it came to fathering children, since not only did he produce an 8-legged horse in his guise as a mare, but as himself he managed also, with the female assistance of the Jotun or giant Angerboda, to father a gigantic wolf, Fenrir, an even larger snake, Jormungandr, which means huge monster, a description rather than a name, and a half-dead, half-living woman, Hel, who would later be put in charge of the realm of the dead that bore her name, Helheim. Loki is unique among the gods of any faith, I should think, in that he can claim to be the father of a wolf, a snake, and a half-corpse, and the mother of a horse. Neat trick if you can do it. Family gatherings at his hall must have been rather interesting, I should think. Guests would have been lucky not to be eaten by something or other, but at least Hel would have been on hand to see them safely to her realm of the dead, I suppose. So, Odin rides forth from Asgard upon the mighty Sleipnir, his spear, which cannot miss, Gungnir, in his hand, a weapon that, like Thor's hammer, returns to his hand after he throws it, with his 2 great wolves, Geri and Freki, running beside him, and his ravens, Hugin and Munin, flying overhead to gather news of what transpired around the world. Now to our other horse. Helhest, or Hell-horse, is the white, 3-legged steed of the goddess Hel, ruler of Helheim, and on which she will presumably ride into the final battle that will bring the end of the world, Ragnarok. Though with only 3 legs, it's questionable as to how maneuverable he will be in battle. Hel is even more powerful than Odin in some ways, since once someone enters her realm, no one, not even the Allfather himself, can get them back without her permission. She obeys no one but herself. And in times of great disasters or plagues and the like, Hel was said to ride forth on Helhest and search for those affected and ready to join her in her realm, gathering them in with a rake and taking them down to her abode. Not a fiery place of agonizing pain and eternal torment like the Christian Hel, spelt with 2 L's rather than the one in the Norse name, but rather just the place where the dead went who didn't die in battle. Not that there was no punishment for evildoers. Oh, there was. Murderers, rapists, perjurers, adulterers, and the like suffered punishment. There was a special place for them, but for ordinary people, it was more or less a rather gloomy, I suppose, continuation of life. Hel could even welcome honoured arrivals in her realm with a magnificent feast. Very different from the Christian concept of hell as a place of sulphur and brimstone, where they certainly didn't give you a feast to welcome you on your arrival. And I'll be talking more about her in detail in another video. But as to her horse, there isn't really much more that we know about Helhest. There is little mention of the animal in mythology, and indeed not a great deal about Hel herself compared with the other gods. There is an interesting old saying in Denmark that a person who survived a serious, usually fatal illness had given death a pack of oats, referring, of course, to the oats being a bribe given to the hell horse to pass them by. So, for now, I shall say farewell and goodbye until next time. Oh, and should there ever be a plague, or you're stricken with some almost always fatal illness, keep a bag of oats handy. Oh yes, if you're lucky, the hell horse may be hungry when it comes, and it will take the oats instead of you. Bye for now.